Hello, and in this video I'm going to look at the part 1 topic of gifts. How often do you buy gifts? Well, in my country we celebrate birthdays and Christmas, and on both of these occasions we give presents to close friends and family. Generally there is someone's birthday every month, and I'm an incredibly organised person, a bit OCD to be honest, so my Christmas shopping starts as early as August. Do you like giving expensive gifts? That depends on the recipient of the gift. If it is something for my children, I tend to purchase quite pricey items. The problem is that kids, particularly teens, are desperate for the latest gadgets, and these cost a fortune. What kinds of gifts do people often give in your country? Nowadays, due to the fact that many people have all the things they need, the majority of presents that are given these days are gift cards or money. In the case of teenagers, it is incredibly tricky to find something unique that they don't already have, so it's easier to let them choose their own gifts. Why do people give gifts? That's an interesting question. I guess on the one hand they give them to please the recipient of the gift, but I suppose it could be argued that gift giving makes the giver feel good as well. Therefore, there is a selfish aspect to giving presents to others. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the language in this topic. There are not many questions, and so there are not that many words to use in case you get this topic. But remember, we talk about celebrating birthdays. We celebrate a birthday, we celebrate Christmas. And here I'm using referencing, which IELTS examiners like, so I'm referring back to the birthdays and Christmas on both of these occasions. Now, instead of just saying friends and family, I've tried to make it a little bit more complex. Close friends. I'm incredibly organised. Remember, I don't like the word very, so I try to use incredibly, exceedingly, excessively, you could say. And this is a very complex phrase. OCD is a condition that some people have, and the full name for it is obsessive compulsive disorder, and it can mean that you are constantly washing your hands, or you're constantly checking that you've locked the door or turned the oven off, and we call it OCD. And somebody who's incredibly organised and obsessed with things, I don't actually suffer from this condition, and we tend to use it in a bit of a jokey way. It's not a nice condition, but there are people like myself. I'm a bit OCD about cleaning, about cleanliness, but I'm also OCD about being organised and being ready for things. Very complex use of language, and so quite a good one to learn because it's quite easy to remember, a bit OCD. I've just highlighted this, that depends on, because I frequently hear this wrong. I hear that's depend on, that depends of, that depends on. Make sure you use it correctly. The recipient is the receiver of the gift, the person you give the gift to. So for this topic it's useful to know that word, the recipient. I tend to purchase. I use this a lot because it impresses the IELTS examiner, meaning I usually purchase. Instead of saying expensive, you can describe something as being pricey. So I'm saying they're quite pricey, quite expensive. Remember to give examples and don't just say, for example, particularly. And instead of just saying they want, they're desperate for the latest gadgets. And here's an idiomatic expression. We have another one, to cost an arm and a leg. I prefer this one because it's not used as much by IELTS candidates, but it's equally complex. To cost a fortune. It costs a fortune, meaning it's very expensive. This discourse marker here nowadays, due to the fact that it just makes it more complex than saying because. And you don't need to do anything with the grammar due to the fact that very good for IELTS writing as well. The majority of, great for writing and speaking, most, presents. And notice that I've used presents as well as gifts. I was doing this topic with somebody recently and they kept just repeating gifts. Remember to avoid repetition, so gifts, presents. These days just means nowadays, and so you could use that in IELTS speaking. Gift cards, these are little cards that you put money on. It might be for a particular shop like H&M, or it might be able to be used in lots of shops, so very useful for this topic. In the case of, when I'm picking a particular example, incredibly tricky, very difficult but much more complex. Unique. A unique present is something nobody else has given them. It's one of its kind. Remember to give yourself a bit of thinking time. That's an interesting question. It's a tricky question. And avoid using I think. We've got I guess. We've got I suppose. Now, I'm not a fan of on the one hand, on the other hand, especially not in IELTS writing. IELTS speaking, it's okay and it's sometimes useful, but try to avoid it in IELTS writing. I see it as a kind of IELTS 5 phrase. To please the recipients, to make the recipient happy. It could be argued, very good for speaking and writing, and gift giving. This is just the giving of gifts. And as well as having the recipient, who's the receiver of the gift, you have the giver of the gift. And I'm saying it's quite selfish. If something's selfish, it's about you and not about the person receiving the gift. So just a little complex phrase to throw in there if you get this topic, that gift giving is quite a selfish act, you could say. Thank you for watching.